is ended. The Atari 8-bit podcast. That's one thing I gained from when working with the Atari is that when you work outside the box, you can do incredible things, but you stick to the book and you're stuck doing what somebody else did. Wow, if I market this, I'll be known as the father of software piracy.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Duane Bolster published 2 programs with Atari Program Exchange, Midas Touch and Advanced Fingerspelling. Midas Touch, a word game, was first available in the summer 1982 APX catalog. Advanced Fingerspelling, a program for teaching letters and sign language, was first available in the fall 1983 catalog. He also created an add-on for the Atari 810 disk drive that circumvented copy protection. This interview took place on March 21st, 2016. Let's start with where you live and what you do today.
Okay, let's see. Well, today I'm retired from 45 years of working in the hospitals. I was doing mostly like emergency or critical care with patients needing apheresis, or dialysis. I also spent 10 years in operating rooms, and that was during, it was just after the operating rooms when I got into working with the Atari when they first came out back in around 1980. I'm retired for about 4 years, and I've been for about 10 or 12 years. I've been building harps and selling them and sometimes donating to people that work in the hospitals, playing harps for the sick and dying.
Really?
And then I got into, with all the work with children. I specialized in children in my emergency and or critical care work with dialysis a lot, and doing procedures like on neonates and babies, as well as infants and toddlers and whatever. But anyway, the harp building progressed into high demand, so I was building for professionals, custom harps for quite a while.
Oh, that's really cool. Do you play the harp as well?
No, I've been so busy building them, plus all my I love gadgets, and so I'm building like 3D printers and inventing things and all that. And I always thought I'd learn the harp when I retired, but I've just been so busy. And plus, I'd have to stop building them if I was going to spend the time it takes to learn it.
Sure.
So I figured I could just keep building.
Sure. Okay, so let's hop in the Wayback Machine and talk about Atari stuff. I'd like to hear the story about how you got interested in computers, kind of the prehistory about, before when you first got your Atari. Tell me the early history, please.
Well, yeah, I was really intrigued. I love gadgets. And in my early days, the best gadget you could come up with was a slide rule, but didn't have batteries or anything. But when Atari came out with their home computer, that was intriguing to me, and I didn't know what you'd do with one or anything. But when I got it, and then realized it was fun to program, and I started just reading up on how to program, and started with the binary stuff and hexadecimals and machine language, but finally found that was much easier with the basic programming language as that developed. But and then our son was born deaf back in '77, so he was around 3 or 4 years old when I was getting into the Atari, and I decided to write a little spelling game, kind of like Hangman, but it was kind of like Wheel of Fortune too. But it was, and Atari, took that one, and with their program they had for people who were interested in programming new and different things. Anyway, and I wrote this game called the Midas Touch, which was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to write it and a lot of fun to play it. And then I had some other companies get interested when I wrote another program, and that's why I mentioned my son was born deaf. I wrote a program that would teach fingerspelling and the basic sign language type of things, and did like a video of a little person you would type in something and he would fingerspell it back to you, and then I had little learning exercises and things like that in it. Anyway, and Atari took that one too to market, but then that was right when Atari started getting into financial problems with. I think they were overloaded with lawyers, and they, like our Atari club here in Portland, was getting threats from the Atari lawyers because we called ourselves the Atari Club, and that was a trade,
Really?
Their property. And I thought, I can't believe this. You would think they would want to encourage an Atari Club, not shut them down, But anyway, their lawyers were all really wrong-minded, and they would harass anyone who used an Atari symbol on their club or anything like that, even because that was all trademarked and proprietary, and then they started losing. I believe it was something in the neighborhood of $1 million a month losses, and so they probably thanks a lot to the bad PR, their Atari lawyers. But anyway, but the lawyers also rewrote my contract, basically reinterpreted my contract with them, and since they were losing so much money every month, they wrote my losses into their calculations.
Oh.
And I was coming up with nothing. They were selling my program worldwide because I made it compatible with PAL system as well as the U.S. And so it could sell like in Europe and England and all that. And then they, anyway, they got so bad off that they wound up selling their company to Commodore it would have been better off a few months earlier to have given it away for what they lost in the meantime. But
they basically ended up giving it away. Yeah. So did So did you make any sales, any money from those programs before they started renegotiating reinterpreting the contract?
Well, it was just getting started, so I was getting a few $100s in checks every so often, but and then that just vaporized.
Sure. Which program was the better seller, or were they about the same, of Fingerspelling and Midas Touch?
Yeah, I think they were about equal. Maybe the Midas Touch had a little more time on the market, so I did a little better with that one.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had a company back east called Main Street Publishing wanted my programs, and so I contracted with them to sell them, and they were selling them. They were in the Kmart stores and things around here locally, and I saw that, and they were even selling them worldwide, and and they kept saying things like the check was in the mail, and they had contracted with a lot of the Atari writers, but. Anyway, that went on for many months, and so finally the only time I've ever gone to a lawyer, but I just went to a lawyer who happened to be a friend of a friend. He said there wasn't a whole lot I could do about it because it was across interstate, and in order to bring any legal action against them interstate, I would lose more money than I could make. and so they were basically free to rip me off with no consequences. And they, when I finally had a lawyer just send them a letter that had no power behind it, that saying to cease and desist the production of the program, because they were selling quite a bit of it. It was, I saw stacks of it in the stores, and then the lawyer's letter got returned. Nobody was at that address anymore, and they had the number lost as they had all shut down and disappeared. And so that was maybe at least a year, maybe two of sales from them, but I never saw a penny.
Wow!
But my main fun in all that though was just the writing it and sharing it, and seeing like at our child Atari Club had hundreds of people in it, and it was fun just to see them enjoying it, things like that. So
nice.
And that was, and I got on international news with it. They came and interviewed me, and I thought it was going to be mostly a local thing, but I wound up having people from other countries calling me, saying they saw it on the news and they were real interested in the sign language program, things like that.
Nice.
So it was just fun.
So did you end up using these programs with your son? I mean, did your son learn fingerspelling with the help of this, or?
No, he was actually always ahead of us. He was
sure.
teaching us. So he turned out to be, he has quite a high IQ. He turned out to be way ahead of all his peers. He was profoundly deaf, but he actually was a rare one who was able to communicate verbally, which is amazing because he heard, without hearing aids, he heard nothing. And with hearing aids, they only heard a distorted muffled sound. But he's just done really well.
Nice.
So,
my daughter goes to a school here in Portland that she's typically hearing, but it is a school for the deaf, and now everyone uses these. All the deaf kids use these processors, and so they don't do sign language at all. Everyone learns to hear using technology now. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the cochlear implants and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, I have read that over the years consistently that I've had people tell me, "Oh, this person's deaf," but I never knew it. You can't tell it. They read lips so good, but mostly the deaf are really good at, who are profoundly deaf. They're really good at letting you think they know what you're saying because they don't want to keep saying what.
Right. Yeah.
And they in actual objective testing, that the very best lip readers were getting about 65% of the words wrong. So it's not as magical as the TV makes it out to be, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the technology, it's just incredible because now Brian communicates with us more than the rest of our kids. He's always, we'll be driving down the freeway talking to him by texting, he'll be at the coast or something, and we're just texting away. And the communications technology has made communication so much better for the deaf. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, maybe it's been a while, maybe you don't remember this, but I'm going to ask anyway. I was playing with fingerspelling, and you could type a message, and then the on-screen guy, you can see his from his chin down to his, I don't know, his navel area, and he's got his little Izod shirt on. You could just barely see the little crocodile on his shirt. It's just adorable. But the impressive thing is, you could turn it up to 115 letters per minute, and he's just all boom, 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 and his fingers are going crazy. The animation is really fast, and I'm wondering how you did that. If you remember, what magic was there?
That was the fun part. Yeah, that was back before about all we had was Pong, and 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 then Space Invaders, and when I was doing that, and I was being told, oh, you can't accomplish that, or you can't do that, and so I would think, well, good. If it's not in the book, then I can do it, because the books always limit you so much if you can't just be creative and inventive. You're stuck with a book, but being, just creating and inventing by concept is so much. That's where you get progress. But what I did was I redesigned all the letters of the alphabet to be parts of the body and the hand.
Redefine character set.
So then, what's that?
You redefined the character set. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so I just go into the grid and change it from an A into part of the finger, and then and so it was actually putting text up on the screen, and this changing the text. The grid of letters would turn into a hand, and then I would alter the printing of the letters to create the different shapes of the hand. Anyway.
Nice.
So that was pretty basic, but it was fun to do.
It was well done. The effect worked. Let's see. And Midas Touch was a sort of Wheel of Fortune game, like you said.
Right.
And I dabbled with that a little this morning. It was kind of fun. Any stories or memories about that one?
It was mostly interacting with people at the club. That's where I got my most action from that one, and it was fun. It was interesting. I suppose one interesting thing was I had it on my own for sale in some local computer stores that had Commodores and Ataris in it, and I like giving things away, so I told the guy to sell them for $5 each, and I'd take half the profit. And they sat on the shelf for like 2 or 3 months with nothing, no action at all. And one day I came by the shop, and he said he sold them all. And I said, well, how'd that happen? He said, I raised the price to $30 each, and they all sold out immediately. So,
nice.
So I learned marketing from that program.
That's cool. So,
yeah.
I'm always interested in Atari Club stuff, and you're in Portland. I mean, I've only been in Portland for 6 years, so I missed the glory days of Portland Atari Club. So, although there's a new one now called the Rose City Atari Club that meets every couple of months. But can you tell me?
Right?
Yeah. Can you tell me about the goings on at the Portland Atari Club back in the day?
Yeah, well, I remember I was amazed how big it started out in the basement of a bank over somewhere in Beaverton, if I remember right, and outgrew that rather rapidly. And this is just a wild guess, maybe 60 people going there, maybe less. And then we moved over to a large auditorium by the Lloyd Center, and I remember 200 and some people coming to that every meeting. And I'm blanking on whether it was once a month or once a week. It must have been once a month. And some of the leaders there were using Ataris in their businesses, like real estate, and they were networking and things like that. And it was interesting that the Atari was, considered a game machine, and the Apple was considered this real serious machine, and yet with emulating an Apple on the Atari, you could run a program 100 times faster. Oh wait, the reading the drive was 100 times faster on the Atari than on the Apple. But I had contracts with Apple also, and they were pretty money oriented and nasty. I would just ask them for pinouts for the joystick port, and they would say, well, you have to pay tons of money to get that, go through all these hoops. And I thought, man, but the Atari, it came with the box. You had tons of information there, and plus the Apples, all you'd have to do is plug in a joystick while the thing was turned on, and you'd blow the motherboard, and then you'd pay 10 times what the motherboard was worth to get a new one. But so they weren't engineered as well as the main thing that was making the Apple work was they were great at selling stuff, and they could stick chrome on a rock and sell it. But their hardware was really bad. But they had the popularity and the advertising, so they grew.
Yes,
they knew how to market.
What? I'll get back to Apple in a minute. But did you do any other Atari software or projects that we haven't talked about?
Oh, yeah. Let me think. No, I think by the time I got into wrapping up the sign language one, which took a lot of time. I'd see sometimes 3 days of programming upstairs in my office without even coming downstairs, and and that's through the night, like working like 30 hours straight or something. But my work at the hospital about that time, it got so demanding that I was doing I was working 20 and 30-hour shifts with no sleep at the hospitals. And so I didn't have a whole lot of time left to program much of anything. So that's about when I got into work overload, kind of survival mode. So
sure,
it was kind of that. I still had the craving to do my work, and I did install a number of computers in doctors' offices and network them and things in the early days of networking, just on the side, but didn't do a lot of programming other than what it took to network or write a database for them and that kind of thing.
Nice. So tell me about the projects you did for Apple.
I actually had the machine, they were so uncooperative and unsupportive that I just got into learning how the machine functioned and some of the unique Apple aspects, and then I got disenchanted with the company, and the last time something blew out on the machine, I just didn't bother fixing it again. But so that was the end of Apple. I never went anywhere.
What haven't I asked you that I should have?
Oh, can't think of anything relative to that. I'm back into programming again now, except this time it's 3D printers and Raspberry Pi cards and things like that.
Nice.
But
cool.
And that's another phenomenally exciting area, is the 3D printing, to just imagine a new invention and then draw it out on the CAD and push a button and have the machine actually create the thing right in front of you. It's
that seems amazing. It seems a little bit like just programming back in the day. Like, I have an idea, I'm going to create a thing, and except now it's a physical thing instead of a program.
Yeah, it's the same. The creating and conceptualizing things is it's just a perfect medium in both cases, which is what got me so much into working with children and critical care and emergency services. It was all new stuff then too, with doing dialysis and apheresis on babies, and we were the only the group I was in we were having children flown to us from 3 or 4 different states because it was such a unique service, and we were doing a lot of seat of the pants work, inventing parts of the machine as we went, and we often would create some new procedure we would have, and that it would maybe be 10 years later, a company would actually come out with something that did it. If we'd have been thinking, we'd have gone a little bit further and developed and marketed what we were doing. But, yeah, that's the. I did learn that just like with the Atari, I suppose that's one thing I gained from when working with the Atari is that when you work outside the box, you can do incredible things, but you stick to the book and you're stuck doing what somebody else did. And that is one other thing I totally forgot about was when they first did the copy protection on the Atari floppy disks, and we had a number of like professional programmers and computer people in the clubs, of course, and they were just working and on breaking the code, to be able to duplicate one of these uncopyable disks. And it intrigued me. And after months, maybe over a year of watching everybody else discuss and debate on it, I thought, I should try that. It would just be I love mysteries and puzzles. And so I sat down and then wrote a program up that would do the copying if I had the correct hardware along with it. And then I never, prior to Atari, did any electronics or computer work or programming. But I had to ask my brother what the schematics, what are these things? Those are resistors and diodes and whatever, and this is what they do. And so I thought it through and decided that there would be a way to write in the hardware, to configure the hardware to write to the disks to duplicate these mysterious things that were keeping the copies from working. And so I had my program. I put together a few components and wired it into the floppy drive and ran the program and stuck a uncopyable disk in and had it copy it, and then I told it to write to a blank disk, and my program told me when to flip the switch for the hardware and things like that, and it would do the other mysterious part. And then it turned out that it worked almost flawlessly. Every single disk I put in, it would copy it. So I thought, wow, if I market this, I'll be known as the father of software piracy. Yeah. And I just thought, so I held off for 6 months or more, and then finally people were begging me for it and saying, I need this because I spilled coffee on my floppy disk the night I was supposed to write my thesis, and now I had no way to do the thesis. I had to have in the next morning, and I thought, okay, it's kind of like a Xerox machine. It's legitimate. It has legitimate uses and backup stuff. So I put that on it was just before I put that on the market. I got a call or a letter from a guy at the Pentagon who was wanting to know my code breaking thing, and so I had some fun interacting with him. And he wanted one of my devices too. So I decided to market it, and but it was like a couple months lag before my ads came out in the Atari type magazines.
Mm-hmm.
And during that couple months, some other people decided to do some fraud, and they produced their copy programs and advertised them, And when finally my ads came out, right next to my ad was this article saying, "Do not buy these devices. They don't work. It's all a fraud," and they're being sued. And there's class action suits going against them. And so that was like great. I just put $1,000 into putting an ad in the paper that they totally destroyed. And so it took me months to recover from that because everybody was like, "No, not buying that," and it basically killed it. And it actually, there was one guy who was in Portland area who had stolen the technology from Atari to do duplicating of the way Atari did it. And he was replicating that and selling it occasionally, but he was having to do that, illegally on the sly, so there was no big mass production for him. But I had it pointed out to me that my device was many times faster than the Atari device. So I thought that was kind of fun to find out.
What was your device called?
It was, let's see, it's been so long. Since I looked at it, let's see. I can't even remember. I've got some laying around somewhere.
Oh, you still have some Atari stuff?
What's that?
You still have your Atari stuff?
Yeah, I think I've got. It's been collecting dust for decades, but yeah, I still got some remnants of the. I've got the machines and the floppy drives, and I wanted to get. I heard somebody had put my Midas Touch and sign language on cartridge. I thought, well, that'd be fun. I'd like to buy one from them. I could never find who had done it.
No, I don't. Well, I don't. They might be on cartridge. I don't know that they're on cartridge. They're online where you can download them and play them in your emulator or on your real machine. But if they're put on cartridge, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I saw somebody, had said they'd done it. It was I Googled something once and went, whoa, it's actually online here, and I saw somebody offering the cartridges, but I tried to later on. I thought, well, I should buy one of those, and I could never find it again. So I don't know if he was blowing smoke or if he really had done it. Wouldn't be that hard to have done back in the day when we had everything, the equipment around.
Well, your story of the copy, the modified floppy drive, that's super interesting. And I'd love to see one of those if you could dig it out.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Oh, I'm trying to think. If I must have, the floppy drive probably still has the hardware in it. It consists mainly of components that I plotted, and in the back of a dual throw switch. It was a square LED lighted switch that you can install on the front of the drive. And when the software told you to activate the protection part, you push that button and the light came on, and then it would write all the magic, stuff to the disk, which they changed frequently. So it had to be able to read and write the protection part of it on, in custom reading or whatever you'd say. It didn't just do one. It didn't just use one thing all the time. But anyway, I think that's all still upstairs in the closet.
Nice.
It got me curious now. I'm going to have to go out and look and see what I called it.
Yeah. Let me know.
I had a little book. Yeah, I had a book that went with it, installing and all that. And surprisingly, because I was getting calls, not calls, but letters from all over the world for that, and most of them were from the military people. So the guy in the Pentagon must have spread the word. But I was getting people in Saudi Arabia and down in South America, and I think even Africa or somewhere in Australia and England and Canada. So that was fun, and I got to meet a bunch of people again doing that. And the really nice thing about all that is I did not ever get a single complaint or a single failed installation. because I was just holding my breath. All these people are going to sue me they burned out their drive because they hooked it up wrong or something. Never heard a complaint.
Nice.
So
the Pentagon guy, did you get the sense that this was for official government business, or he just was an Atari user who happened to work at the Pentagon?
Yeah, I think he was most likely an Atari user that worked at the Pentagon. Although he did it all with official Pentagon correspondence, which probably wasn't appropriate. I guess.
But it got your attention.
Using a Pentagon stamp.
Nice.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I saw it.
I think that's about all I have. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I was trying to find that just maybe a year or so ago when I was mentioning it to my daughter was visiting, and I mentioned the guy in the Pentagon who contacted me about my copy protection code breaker, and she looked at me, just at my husband. She says, "You didn't do that." I guess she was young enough that she didn't remember that, and I never talked about it. So I tried to find my letter from that guy. I couldn't find it. That was disappointing. I think I would have saved that.
I think, yeah. Well, I think that's about all I have for you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thanks. It was fun to remember. Yeah, it was fun to chat.
Yeah.
So thanks for calling.
Yeah, cool. I'll let you know when this is published. Are you interested in, should I put you on the list for notification when the new Portland Atari Club meets?
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Sure.
And, yeah, that would be fun.
It's not as big as it used to be, but...
Yeah, and I'm sure it's got to be a whole different atmosphere, one of nostalgia and the past. But not a lot of new product coming out, I would assume. But, yeah, have you ever been to that one? Are there people still writing new, innovative things?
Oh, there are, absolutely. The people are creating new hardware, and the hardware they create now is incredible. I mean, you can...
Oh, yeah.
Because they're using modern technology hooking up with the Atari. So hook your Atari up to, SD cards, and, here's a memory upgrade that adds, 4 megabytes to your Atari, and crazy stuff that would have been impossible back in the day. Yeah,
really. Yeah, I remember 1 megabyte when I upgraded my machine, and I was so excited. I upgraded it to 1 meg of memory, and I was just like, this is incredible, and it was going to cost $1,000.
Right.
Like, man, that would put, you'd have to spend a few $1 million to maybe approach more like 100 million to get, if you paid that kind of price for memory now. But that brings back some memories too. Yeah. In fact, I remember Bill Gates saying when a 10 meg hard drive was coming out, and Bill Gates himself was saying, "Well, nobody will ever use that much memory in their whole lives."
Right. Yeah, you're never going to fill that.
I'd like to go talk to him about that one now. Anyway, I'm going to let you go.
Thank you so much, Duane. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It was good talking to you.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.